Okay, so we're live here with Virginia Korte. Is that right?
Yes.
I got it. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. So Virginia is running for mayor for the city of Scottsdale. So another one of our interviews with candidates that we're having. So I just kind of wanted to introduce you, make sure that we're live here. So I'll take a quick peek. And it looks like we are. So we're good to go there. So Virginia, tell us a little bit, like we just chatted, it's got to be a really difficult campaign to run right now, based on the fact that, you can't shake hands and kiss babies and be out on the street, right?
That's right. And so much of politicking or actually leading is having conversations. And I think conversations are critical for people to get to know you, to understand who you are, where you're coming from, what are some of your values, and what's important. So when March 15th hit, we said, okay, how are we going to run this campaign? It's not going to be in neighborhood gatherings. It's not going to be in forums that are full, of 200 people to listen. So, gosh, we've done it through social media, Facebook, email blasts, Instagram, Twitter. We have done it through Zoom conversations. And also just some personal videos. And the videos that I've published, I like to pat myself on the back because those are selfie videos. I have produced those by myself, and you can tell, but they're not bad. It allows people to get a feel for who you are by hearing your voice and inflection, and get a feel for your personality. So yes, we're busy, and it's crunch time. Early ballots hit tomorrow in the mailbox. You're going to see them in your mailbox starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And know that 91% of our Scottsdale voters vote by early ballot. And of those 91%, they return those ballots within the first 10 days. So the primary is basically over about the 20th or 25th of July.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's funny to see the rest of the country talking about mail-in voting, whereas like here in Scottsdale, that's pretty much what we do, right?
Well, and we need to thank our Secretary of State, Michelle Reagan, and before Michelle Reagan, but also our county in embracing mail-in ballots. We probably lead the country in access to mail-in ballots. So yeah, sure. It's really important now because talking with our city clerk, our county is having a hard time finding locations that will provide the social distancing for ballot day for August 4th. And so there's going to be some places in Maricopa County that are open for 2 weeks. There's going to be some that are open for a week, and then there's going to be some just open for August 4th. And sure. We're hoping that provides adequate access for everyone that wants to vote.
Yeah, so let's jump into it a little bit. So the world today is significantly different than the world when you decided to run for mayor. And that's going to impact all of us. But, some of the things that I think are really big and that people have brought up quite a bit is, what do you anticipate as far as the budget for the city of Scottsdale going forward? Because obviously, really economically or tourism driven, and we took a big hit on that. And maybe going forward, we'll continue to, who knows? But that's got to affect the city coffers, I would think.
Yes. So know that our city staff and council, we started working on reducing expenses on March 16th. Because we saw the writing on the wall, and so within the first 3 weeks, we had reduced expenses by about 19%, and that's freezing. That's freezing open employment, open jobs, canceling contracts. So many things that we could reduce it by 19%. Then when we come and we've already approved the budget, final improvement was this last week. We we reduced it another 20% on top of that. So now we are, to give you some numbers, we are looking at a budget of, this is the general budget, about 296 million.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was 316 million.
Oh, wow.
And so we've reduced it significantly. And because of 2019 and 2020, that fiscal year being as strong as it was, regardless of the pandemic that hit us the last quarter, we will have a carryover of about $10 million that is going to get us through next year. So my concern and what we're all looking at is, how long is this pandemic going to impact our economy? How long is it going to impact our lives? And how long is it going to take for us to rebound? So because we're a tourism industry, we're more susceptible. 35% of our economic base is based on tourism. 70% of our resources and income are based on tourism, and that's huge, and that makes us very vulnerable. So I have spoken about for years the need to diversify our economy. Mm-hmm. That's not all, so we need to be better at retaining and attracting those well-paying jobs, so that our citizens who deserve to be able to live and work here can live and work here. And a Nationwide is a good example of providing Class A office space. They'll be, after their phasing is done, which is about 5 or 7 years, they will have created about 2,500 jobs. And, our citizens are going to be filling those jobs. And I think that's important. We need more of that.
Yeah, so that's a big hot topic with all the council candidates and mayoral candidates. What's the balance? Like, we are tourism driven, right? But that's also what has put us on the map, is being a fantastic place to come, to be a tourist, and to relax and hang out. So do we want to not focus on that as much, or do we want to additionally focus on other industries to bring in, or how do you work that balance? Because it's got to be tricky.
We will always be a tourism destination. Scottsdale is blessed to have 9 million visitors every year, 10 million visitors every year, and shoppers on top of that to Scottsdale, because that's what drives our economy, and that's what keeps our property taxes low. We will always be a tourism-based economy, but we just need to diversify that. I believe that we have been planning to diversify and working on that balance since the 80s. And you'll find documents, city documents and planning documents back to the 80s regarding our downtown and what it's going to take to sustain our downtown and make it a vibrant downtown. And that goes back decades. Now we're seeing, we're seeing some of the impacts of that with some taller buildings, a little bit more density. But if you look at the plan, and we have in 2018, our city council approved unanimously a Old Town Character Area Plan update. And if you look at that, about 5 to 7% of that is density. The rest of it is remaining Old Town character. And our historic Old Town, where the saloons are, on the east side of Scottsdale Road, that is sacred land. That is sacred land, and the only way that's going to change is if someone comes in and repairs their buildings from the termites, whatever it is.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about, it's been obviously a really hot topic, the handling by the city, let's not get to the mayor or the president, but by the city of, one, everything that happened in Fashion Square as far as the looting and the rioting, and then also kind of the idea of everybody wearing masks. So, I've heard a lot of people on both sides of it, but a consensus has kind of been, it's felt like a lack of leadership on both of those things. Was it? I mean, what's your take on it?
So my take on both of them is yes, there's leadership there. So let's take Fashion Square first. Let's do it in chronological order.
Sure.
The intelligence that the Scottsdale police were receiving that day, and I can't remember. I think it was May 25th. Not sure. That day was that there was going to be a peaceful protest of about 50 to 75 people. So they planned for that, and they had about 85 police officers stationed for that, and about 75 peaceful protesters showed up. And then around 9:45 at night, following those peaceful protesters, were about 500 non-peaceful protesters.
Sure.
And the police department and the police were totally overwhelmed. The local jurisdictions that they had reached out prior for potential backup if it was needed failed to provide that backup, and we weren't not able to get shall we say a significant number of police officers and safety officers there until about 12:30 or 1, and that's when it subsided. But the important thing is, number one, no one was hurt. And number two, the police department prevented those looters and that violence from encroaching into the neighborhoods and also encroaching into the Fifth Avenue area. So, we can replace broken windows and stolen merchandise, but lives aren't replaceable. And I believe that was the right call for the police. Quite honestly, police, you don't shoot at looters. You just don't do that. So I believe there was leadership there. I support the police chief 100% on that. Regarding the mass, John, who would have thought that mass would become a political issue?
It's crazy. Just crazy.
So, you can take your scientific data, you can take your information wherever you want, because given the internet, you've got different degrees of scientific knowledge. I choose to take my scientific knowledge from the CDC, the Arizona Health Department, and when they recommend wearing masks, and they show that the data is if you wear a mask and I wear a mask, that we can control the contraction of this or the spread of this pandemic by 80%, then I think it's worth wearing a mask.
Sure. Well, there you go. I'm ready. I've got one on hand.
I could be.
I love it. Yeah, I get it. It's definitely a challenge. That kind of leads into another topic, though. So it seems like Scottsdale as a whole, we've kind of suffered, I would say, an image problem in the last 4 or 5 weeks nationally. And, from the bars and COVID, and from the incidents with Guy and the lady freaking out at Target, and now
I was just viewing that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. And then, being a hotspot for COVID in the world right now, how do we get back on track and get away from that? That's a tough question.
Well, thank you very much. So first, I think it's important to condemn the actions of a city council person using the dying words of a individual that was killed. That is outrageous, and I think that's one of the most important things we can do. Know that we cannot. The city council has no power to remove a council member, except under egregious crime, felony of some sort. So Mr. Phillips' response is totally up to him, and I know at this point he is refusing to resign. In spite of the calls of 5 council members asking him to. Mm-hmm. So that's an important statement. Now, while we did not call for his resignation as a unified voice, we all, in our own way, called for his resignation. So I think that's an important voice to be heard. How we gain our Scottsdale, these are we will continue to do what we do best. And that's showing our community that it's still a best place to be, best place to live, safe place to live, and we welcome and we're inclusive, and that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's get away from the common, what's going on every day in the world. What do you think about, and this is something that's been really interesting to me, districting for council members. Have you any thoughts on that, or have you talked about it?
So no. So I'm going to go back when back in the early 2000s, there was a group of individuals that brought forward a petition to call for districts, and this was about 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. Sure. I was heading up the Chamber of Commerce at that time, and we as a group made the decision after a lot of thoughtful conversation that districts did not fit Scottsdale at that time. We were about 175,000 population. Now we're 255. So sure. Take us fast forward where, and I can still argue both sides. I can argue that districts would provide a better representation, that council members would be more accessible to their constituents, and also running for council would be more accessible because it would be less expensive. On the other hand, I think districts create a quid pro quo and trading votes, and and I've seen it in some communities that they've created a more divisive community than bringing together. So I can argue both sides. Sure. I think it's time, given that we're 255,000 people living in Scottsdale, that we have that conversation. And let's have the conversation.
Yeah. No, I love the idea. And it kind of leads into something else. So with the size of the city and, the length and we're almost 4 different areas, right? So, I mean, you got South Scottsdale, you've got Central, you've got North, and you've got really far North. So how, when you're elected mayor, how do you bring those people together? How do you hear the voice from all those different regions?
John, if you go back to the roots of Scottsdale, and I'm going to go back to the 60s, the city invited citizens to engage in the STEP forums, Scottsdale Town Enrichment Program. And those STEP forums went on for like 2.5 years. And through that process, that group of people, and everyone was invited, and that group of people really created the vision for Scottsdale. So that was the 60s. In the 70s was a visioning process, similar. In the 80s, there was a visioning process. In the 90s, there was a visioning process. We haven't had a visioning process in, 30 years? 90s? Mm-hmm. 20 years? 25 years? Sure. It's time to do that because everyone, we're a diverse community. You can go up to the North Scottsdale and get a totally different perspective on what they think Scottsdale is versus the person that lives downtown in one of the condominiums or one of the old Hallcraft homes. Sure. Totally different perspectives. It's time to bring that together and say, okay, what do we want Scottsdale to be in 2050? Mm-hmm. So Scottsdale Conversations 2050 to bring this community together.
Sure. And does that, and again, you're going to have to help me with this one a little bit because I'm not an expert on it at all, but it seems like some candidates, whether for councilor or mayor, are really into the general plan and some aren't. I mean, does it affect this? I mean, I understand it hasn't been updated in a long time. Is that something that needs to be done, or does that help outline where we go forward?
Our general plan needs to be updated, but know that we have been updating our general plan through character area plans for the last 10 years. So we had in Old Town, character area plan in Old Town, McDowell character area plan, Shea Boulevard character area plan. So those have all been been updated and implemented. The general plan, because it's a state mandate, we update it every 10 years. I think for the community, we need to update it. But the general plan is a separate process than Scottsdale Conversations 2050.
Sure.
Because while the general plan is going to determine zoning and key in some education type stuff, the visioning process is a broader aspect.
Sure. So one, it's kind of, this is a national topic right now. Myself, which my opinion doesn't really matter anyways, I think defunding the police, yeah, well, it's going to. I think defunding the police is insane. I'm definitely not pro that. I think there could be some options there, but what do you think of that whole drive to defund the police? You know, whether it's Minneapolis or Seattle or here.
I understand where that's coming from. We've asked the police department and those individuals to wear a lot of different hats.
Sure.
Domestic violence to homelessness to mental illness, and does one person and then to wear a gun. You know, so those are really 180-degree different skill sets. So does the police department need to be defunded? Absolutely not. But do we need to provide some other ways to respond to some of our community needs? Yes, we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Whole thing just, it's crazy to me for sure. Rolling into something else that we kind of touched on just for a second there, but you know, affordable housing in Scottsdale. So it's really, you know, it's not there. I mean, if you work for the city possibly, or the fire department, the police department, it's really hard to afford a home in Scottsdale. You know, is there a need for us to develop affordable housing? Is it possible to do?
John, we're a victim of our own success. We have the highest property values in Maricopa County and the state, highest property values. That makes it really difficult to create and meet that equation for affordable housing. If our citizens believe that affordable housing is important, then I think we should figure out a way to do that. But I think I'm going to go back to a community conversation again, because it's easy to say, hey, we need to create affordable housing. It's hard to do that because, you know, we've got private property rights. Property owners deserve to get the most value out of their property and the highest and best use and all of that stuff. So yeah, let's talk about it. Sure.
Yeah, and on the housing thing, so give me your take on it. And it's obviously been a pain for a lot of people, but it's also that capitalist kind of thing. So there's a lot of short-term rentals in Scottsdale. You know, party houses, not party houses, condos, homes, townhomes. You know, how do you see the city's role in managing that and addressing it?
So know that our state legislature and Governor Ducey removed the city's ability to manage short-term rentals. And that was years ago.
Okay.
And that's one of the problems. If the city could manage short-term rentals, we wouldn't have the party houses in residential areas. Now, I've been lobbying the state legislature the last 2 years. We were this last session, beginning in January of 2020, we were making some progress towards changing some of those ordinances, allowing the cities to have more control. And then, of course, COVID happened and the session ended. I'm hoping that comes back. I know that the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, that is still one of their top priorities. And I will be there to be a voice for Scottsdale.
Sure.
One good thing is, and I don't know if it was VRBO or if I think it was Airbnb, that they've created a new policy of refusing to advertise the party houses.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
And wow, what a great step! Really, this this self-regulation by the industry should be where it goes. They should
Sure.
regulate.
So with the what's going on in the world today, what's the plan, or is there one in place, or is there an approach to increasing the diversity of the city? Because it's not necessarily a very diverse city, as far as culturally, ethnically. Is there thoughts on changing that, or making it more inclusive, or is that being looked at or addressed?
Well, John, how do you make a community more diverse?
I'm not sure.
One way is you make it a safe community and be inclusive. And I have been an advocate for non-discrimination ordinance for the LGBTQ community since 2015, and failed because 5 members of the council either believed that it was harmful to business, or worse yet, that discrimination doesn't exist in Scottsdale, so we don't need it. It's a solution looking for a problem. That couldn't be more far from the truth.
Sure.
We need to implement and pass a non-discrimination ordinance. Now, the Supreme Court has helped us recently. In the last 3 weeks, they upheld the fact that our Constitution covers employment rights for LGBTQ. So now a member of the LGBTQ community cannot be fired because they're gay. And that's a good step, but they can still be denied housing, and they can still be denied service in public spaces.
Sure.
We need to change that. So that's one of the first steps. And I think that's an important step to tell the broader community that we are an inclusive community. And beyond that, I also think that we have a Human Relations Commission, and I think the Human Relations Commission could really take up this conversation around systemic discrimination or unintentional bias, however you want to call it. I believe that racism and unintentional discrimination is part of our DNA. It's been part of human culture since the beginning of recorded time. Wars have been fought over discrimination, and still are. So I think to take that up and create some process around that, and it's not a one-off thing. It's changing the culture, and it's changing the culture within the city and within the city staff and the city and the citizens.
Sure. Okay, so we're coming up near our end of time, because I told you it'd only be a half hour. But let's say you're elected mayor. Obviously, you're going to have a huge amount of stuff on your plate, right? But what would be, let's say, 2 or 3 of your primary focuses that you would want to see done during your term?
So, of course, fiscal responsibility is number one. We've got to create that equation that is a sustainable, fiscally sustainable equation to maintain the quality of life that we want. 2 is this whole visioning thing. Too much energy is being spent in our community talking about what height and density is and what it is not. And let's come together and say, okay, we can do this, and we don't do this, because Scottsdale's landlocked. We have less than 2% of our land yet to be developed. The rest of it is redevelopment, and that's a totally different cost equation and a set of issues that go beyond this conversation.
Sure.
Third is around quality of life, sustaining our preserve, make sure that our Dallas Norm Preserve is sustainable. And also, I want to implement an urban forestry program, which
I love that.
Which is science-based. Phoenix has one, Tempe has one. It's not new, but it's based on the fact that if you create a 25% shade canopy in your community, you can reduce the ambient temperature significantly, and also increase your air quality because of the CO2 absorption. Trees are not just for climbing.
Sure. Love it. So you and I'm sure you don't know this, but you and I are neighbors. We live in the same community. So on the way to the end of the interview here, give me your favorite restaurant around us. What's your favorite place to go to?
Oh, I'm going to have to say Ling and Louie's.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice little bar there. You can go eat at the bar or have some good Asian food. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Virginia, thank you so much. Anything you want to close with?
Hey, John, looking for people's support and vote. Go visit my webpage, KorteScottsdale.com. Get to know me, call me, because I'm out there and I want to talk to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for talking to us.
Hey, appreciate it, John. Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Bye.